Okay, welcome to today's stream. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Mac Studio and different varieties of the Mac Studio. So, we'll see how it goes. First, I made a few videos a few weeks ago talking about how I was getting a new Mac Studio Ultra, and the truth is I'm still getting a Mac Studio Ultra, but it hasn't arrived yet. And that computer was ordered on May 27th. So we are now in week 11 and it hasn't arrived. And I've seen a bunch of people online saying that, they ordered it and they said, 9 to 10 weeks or whatever, and it came early. Apparently, that's just not the case for everybody. And so in my case, we're getting a Mac Studio Ultra at some point. Just not today and not this week. So we called the rep that we have, and they said it's likely to come in week 13 or 14 after it was ordered. And that's incredible. I mean, just think of how long that is. People who want to use these computers. And so I'll take you through really quickly why my computer, for instance, was so slow in coming, as far as I can tell. So you never really know exactly until you know, but um, here's the Mac Studio page, and we'll go to buy right now. You'll see there's the two choices. If you get the M1 Max right now, it'll deliver to Denver August 24th. So that's in 8 days. It would be the earliest. Or the latest would be August 31st. And or I could get it at the Apple Store September 1st. And so and that's not bad. I mean, we're looking at for the 31st. I'm pulling up my full calendar. That's 2 weeks, right? Perfect. You can get the Max ones right off the bat. Let's select this though, because the one that I'm using right now is slightly customized. It has the 64 gigs of RAM. And so that one already goes from 2 weeks to 8 to 10 weeks by customizing it. Now, this is a customization that I would probably make. And in fact, the computer I'm using right now, let me pull this up on my second monitor. Overview, display, storage. Yeah, I don't want to. It does. It's the Max with 64 gigs of memory, and it has 1 terabyte of storage. I think so. That's an upgrade here as well. And it's a good computer, but 8 to 10 weeks just to make those two customizations. That's kind of intense. But that's what happened with my Ultra, I think. The Ultra, just straight out of the box, is October 6th through October 20th. And so, I mean, that's a 2 week period. I mean, they're just showing you right here that they have no idea when it's going to get there. And so, without any customization, the Ultra, right this moment, so the earliest it could come is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 weeks, 8 to 9.5 weeks. And that's without any customization. Now, of course, when we ordered mine, I did not go with the higher GPU cores. We just kept it at the base. And I think it's just the 64 gigs of unified memory, but we did go up to 2 terabytes, and that switches it out. That makes it longer a little bit. So, I mean, this is the thing you're doing right now. Right now, with the way that tech is shipping, for whatever reason, adding a bigger hard drive really slows things down, or adding more memory, any kind of customization right now is adding more time. But 13 to 14 weeks. The other part of this, I'm assuming, has to be because I'm at a university and we did it through our education account. So anybody who's hoping to get this through the educational part of Apple, I think that just added a few weeks all by itself. So, cool. It's going to be slow. But in the interim, I do have right now the Macs up and running. I haven't put all my third-party plugins and things because I'm just going to be redoing this all in a week or two when the Ultra comes. And then we'll be doing a bunch of tests because I want to compare a lot of what we're getting here with the Macs, and then essentially the same computer, just with the Ultra, but the same amount of RAM and the same with everything else. And then we'll have them do the same tasks and see just what's going to happen there. Because I'm interested. I think that this is really a curious time to be using these computers, and we're still, even though we don't want to always admit it, we're still transitioning from the old chip type to the new M1, even though we've got M2s out there. It's unlikely at this moment that the Mac Studio is going to switch to the M2 anytime in the immediate future, just because people can't even get their hands on the old one. Maybe it'd be ironic if the people ordered their M1s 3 months ago, and all of a sudden they were to do that. That would be, Apple doesn't really care that much, but certainly it would be frustrating for a lot of people. Okay, so what I'm hoping then is to have a dialogue for what people are interested in learning about these machines if they're thinking about buying them. The real truth is that if you want one of these, you should order it 6 weeks ago apparently, so that you'd be almost getting it because you can't do that. You could be looking at some of the MacBook, or the MacBook Air, MacBook Pro. A lot of those right now are doing amazing things, but none of them are still quite to the level of what you can get with the Ultra, which is why I'm getting it, because I wanted to see exactly what it can do. I'm not getting it for Logic. Since I've been using and putting this, the M1 Mac Studio through its paces, I've never even come close to hitting a ceiling with any of it. It never makes a noise. It's sitting right next to me here. I can't hear anything. It's not doing anything right now, but I've done a lot of stuff with it, and it's never made even a peep. I've heard that the Ultra does sometimes make a whistle sound, so we'll see how that works. It may be that this has to sit a little bit further away from where I'm recording, but we'll see how that goes. The other thing I was going to talk about today a little bit was the upgrade cycle with Logic. We are expecting pretty much any day an update to Logic. We are currently on, let's see right here, we are currently on 10.7.4, and it's been that way for between 3 and 4 months, and we're just expecting something else to happen with this. Now, it could be that they're going to wait until the new Mac operating system is updated. They'll have to update Logic with something just to update it for the new operating system. But it's been on, we've been slowly moving through 10.7 without a lot of major bumps or anything, fixing any kind of the normal bug squashing and things like that. And so we're expecting it could be as early as this, this afternoon to in the next couple of weeks, just prepping things up. But it'll be one of those small updates, nothing major in terms of what we might expect from a big number update. Certainly a small update. So we're keeping our eyes peeled to the ground for that, because it should, I mean, we're typically would see something any day now. So we'll be seeing what they do with that. I am curious what people are thinking about in terms of the biggest bugs they've been facing in the most recent versions. We're not talking about the ones that have been around for a long time, but maybe what are some of the bugs that you've been facing that are newer. So let me know in the comments if you've been dealing with any of those. I haven't been. My only bugs and issues deal with having to run this in Rosetta instead of Universal. And almost all of that then stems through having to do things with third-party software. So I haven't really had many issues with Logic all by itself. And so I think that that's going to be one of those interesting issues. Continuing to be an interesting issue is who's going to finally, finish updating things, etc. So I use quite a bit. Let me open up a new instrument track here. For instance, I use a lot of the Reason stuff. I really like the Reason stuff. I don't have it installed on this computer. I just looked at that. And so I use a lot of the Reason software, Propellerhead, the Reason rack, and they're still not updated to Universal. They're still making us use Rosetta. And they've said a number of times that they're going to eventually get that working, but they're not. So it's like they're updating other things. They're adding new features and software and instruments and effects and all kinds of things, but they're not getting this up and going to that. And so either they have only, small skeleton crew trying to update this, or it's a much bigger task than I understand. And so I'm always curious about that as well. But, we'll see. Those are the things holding you back right now. So in terms of getting using one of these machines, any of the Mac Studio stuff, the first thing is compromising on which one you buy so you can actually get one. If you want like a fully decked out one, it's going to be like 3 months before you can get it. And I keep on thinking one of these days that'll turn around, but it's just getting slower instead of faster. So it's not like they're catching up and then all of a sudden things are more available. Right now, every time I look, or every week that I look, they just like push it back a few days. And so I think that that's one of the biggest roadblocks. The other one is if you're not on any of the M1 stuff and you keep on thinking, well, maybe we're at the point where we can do it. Some big software people are still not fully making things compatible with the M1 silicon architecture. So I think that's a problem. Gigadeath, how you doing? Any experiences with native instrument complete compatibility? It's not working actually with Monterey. I've got to wait until November. Yeah, so native instruments I don't use. I used to use native instruments. For a long time I was a huge proponent of native instruments. As an educator and an author, they used to send me all of their stuff for free, and I would use it, but I ran into this issue so many times. It would work until it wouldn't work. I found some of the stuff so amazing to use, but buggy, and so eventually I stopped using it. And so I don't use it at all. Do I think LP Logic Pro 11 will come out this year? No, I don't. I think we have one more number first. I think we're going to go to 10.8. And then we'll go to 11 probably next year. It's my guess. I have no foundation for that. I did a video not too long ago all about all of the different updates and the life cycle of this thing. And, I don't know. I just think that they're not in any hurry to make a huge change. Although my feeling is with a lot of the updates we have been getting that we're getting a lot of updates that are like side in the sidebar into Logic itself. So plugins, instruments, those type of features. And anytime that they're building out a lot of those, but not changing a lot of the core functionality of Logic, to me that means that they're working on the core part of Logic separately, and that when they're ready, they'll dump that on us. But all of the other ancillary stuff, all of the side stuff, will just be able to pop right in the new version. And so that's my guess, is that they're working on the version 11, which would have some more basic functionality differences. The core heart of it would be different. But I mean, every time we get some new updates, I mean, I've got an iPad Pro, and I've been using the new iPad OS on it, and it's the most like a computer I've ever seen. You can have multiple windows running on the same screen. It's a little bit clunky, but every update to the beta seems a little bit better. And so I think that I think we're getting close to them just pulling the plug on some of this and making some bigger changes. Um, I know. Oh, hey, LA Winter, how you doing? And Esta, you would like to see a new UI, and I don't agree. I mean, and anybody, I'm not from the boomer generation, but you can say, hey, or okay, boomer, about this. But the longer I live, the less I find changing things up useful. In fact, now that most workstations can do almost everything you'd want it to do. I mean, you could be using Pro Tools, Ableton, Reaper, Logic, GarageBand, and you can accomplish the same tasks in most of those, with some exceptions. Then changing up the UI just messes with people's workflow. Let's let people work. Let's let people create, and only change when it helps them with that particular process. For instance, I really liked it in. I'll do this here. Let's add behind me here. Let's just add one of the drum machine designers, right? Cool. And then step sequencer down here. So the step sequencer was a huge change, kind of. I mean, it still fits down here in the editor. It doesn't change any of the tracks or other stuff like that. So it didn't really mess with too much. But it was a huge functionality boost and a huge efficiency boost. And so I got to do a lot more stuff that I wanted to with this. And so that's a really great example. But if you start going through and like, we're going to change where all the solo buttons are, and we're going to like change where the library is, and unless it's like for a very specific reason, I don't think you should mess with it, because then it just messes with people and what they're trying to do. And so Pro Tools hasn't changed that much over the years. Um, and honestly, I think that this is, oh man, this is going to burn me down to the ground, but this is one of the reasons I hate Reaper. Everyone's like, it's so flexible, you can move everything around. Great, that means 3 people using this piece of software can't go onto each other's systems very easily and have any sort of efficiency. I mean, good. I mean, great. If that's what you want, is to always look different and be able to move everything around, then great. But there's certain things to be said for keeping things the same all the time. Better UI for composing. You know what? I do wish at some point that they would revamp some of the score editing, because it's good and it's very powerful, but it's a little clunky. So there are things like that you could improve on for sure. Um, yes, DJ Chimera, if that's how you say it. I've talked about that so much on my channel. The MIDI effects should just be they should have a different name for it, or leave it as MIDI effects, but they should be on every channel. Any one that applies to any other channel. So for instance, a MIDI data, the compressor for MIDI data, dynamics, I think, or whatever it's called. Let me look at, I guess I'll look at it real quick. So the one that's velocity processor. Yeah, that wouldn't make sense on an audio channel, right? That wouldn't. Scripter might not. It might, but it might not. The arpeggiator, actually, you could do some really cool things with audio. Chord trigger, modifier, yes, maybe. Modulator, 1000%. This should be on every channel. No repeater, we already have delay, so you wouldn't need to, but you could unify all of these. You could say this is like a delay, and if you put it on a MIDI track, then it does MIDI delay instead of audio delay. I mean, there's ways to do that, to unify it. Randomizer should be on everything. Transposer, we already have transposer on both, but not like that. That one you can actually do chord scale specific transposition. We should be able to do that in audio at some point too. So yes, I agree with all of that for sure. And then Ellie Winter says, love to see MIDI though on all types of tracks where MIDI signals can affect plugins later in the chain. Agreed. I'm going to say yes to that. I think that that'd be an awesome idea. Poof, that'd be like, that's what the metaverse really should be, is all of these like interconnections of audio and MIDI on tracks instead of, anyway. I think that that's pretty meta. That's how it should work for sure. But it's like if, jumping off kind of what I think you mean. For instance, if I had like this drummer right here and I could put MIDI like right there, or maybe it's not on the same track. Maybe it's like just on a separate track and I can route it straight to this thing. And it's like controlling various parameters of the drum kit. Or if you have a vocal and we put, like a pitch, flex pitch, and we wanted to control that with MIDI, we could put a MIDI track either right on top or, in like what we have with automation lanes. And so they just like pop down and there's like a whole MIDI lane that you can do. That would be awesome to be able to really make those things all work together. That's pretty cool. And Bitwig, I was one of the early beta testers for Bitwig before it was released. Back in the day, it's been a while now, and there's a few workstations I have a lot of respect for, and some that I don't. But Bitwig is one. They went off and they were like, you know what? We're just going to make something new. And then they built it from the ground up after a lot of lessons had been learned. Same thing happened with Studio One. I think Studio One has always been for me like a really cool concept because it didn't come after decades of use and like being locked into what's there. Logic, not the case. I mean, this original code was working on one of the original Ataris. I mean, this thing is ancient in terms of workstations. Pro Tools is that same way. I've heard all these rumors about Pro Tools basically using code wrappers to maintain some of the original coding that was in there that's so inefficient, being ported over using code wrappers inside new versions of it. It's like, okay, no wonder we have issues, so. But Bitwig and Studio One for me are two that are really new. Reaper, I'm not even going to talk about. Reaper is a really important piece of software right now for everybody because they are pushing boundaries and everyone else is like, oh crap, Reaper's pushing boundaries. We need to do something too, instead of just doing it because they should. I mean, they do push boundaries. I'll never use Reaper. because it doesn't have the MIDI and instrument infrastructure that I like with Logic. The same reason I wouldn't use Pro Tools, or probably even Ableton. It doesn't have the stuff that I would use personally. It doesn't mean it's bad. I'm not going to say it's bad. I think Reaper is really important in many ways. Let's see. Gigadeath, I would like to see keyboard shortcuts always targeting the actual window. Actually, at least for me, a keyboard shortcut, the piano roll is executed in the main window, but probably it is me. Gigadeath, that is you. Because it does work. It works really well if you're like always paying attention to everything. So if you look right up behind me here on my mouse, that little blue box that's around the main window thing up there, it's like, I don't know how much my delay is. It's like that little blue line that's right there. It goes around that window. If I click down to there, then the blue box comes down to the bottom window. That is telling you where the keyboard shortcuts are going to go. So by selecting inside that window, that little blue box switches back and forth. That tells you where your keyboard shortcuts are the destination is for them. And so that's one of the hardest parts of this, is always keeping track of where your keyboard shortcuts are going. And that little blue box, that focus frame, tells you where your keyboard shortcuts are headed. Then Ellie Winter, I would love to be able to sidechain plugins to each other that are on the same track. Man, so I have a hard time with sidechaining in general, and I don't know if this is a third-party coding issue or if it's actually something else. But it's like I can't just sidechain anything I want. I want to be able to sidechain everything. And so I agree with that comment, LA Winter. I think sidechaining is a huge deal that is so powerful, and yet I feel like I'm cut off at the ankles every once in a while with Logic, because it doesn't just open that up every single time. And you're welcome, Gigadeath. Love teaching new things. Trust me, that blue box screws me over though. I mean, it's not enough. It is enough, because I see it and I remember, or I'm like hitting a key command and it doesn't do what I think it does. I'm like, oh shoot, I got to change my window focus. So, and there's another thing. You can map a key shortcut to switch the active window. Cool. I want to look at that real quick because I've never done that. I wonder what that's called. Focus, maybe? I'm looking at the shortcuts here. I'll have to look that up. Oh, toggle? No. Zoom. I'll have to look that up. I don't know what that's actually even called right this moment. If you remember what that's called, let me know in the chat and I'll pull that up. But that'd be an awesome tip. I would learn something. Although I don't ever think that there's so many key commands. I don't really think about them all that much. I almost always assume you can do almost anything with key commands. And so then I just kind of figure out what I need to do. Ellie Winter says, I would use this for vocal reverb and delay effects on aux channels so I don't have to use Ghost sidechain track for ducking the lead vocal. Yeah, I mean, Ghost sidechain does work. But you're totally right. Okay. Anyway, so that would be useful. I'm trying to think if there's a different way to do that, and I can't think of anything. Because if I have on like my Reverb. Yeah, I can't think of a different way to do that. So yeah, you're right. That would be nice. And another comment, I would love to be able to band split plugins like it lets us mid-side and left-right split right now. Yeah, so for instance, Studio One has that built onto every track. So you can like frequency split all of your plugins into different bands. And here in Logic, there's ways to do it, but it's a pain in the butt. And then Ivan says, or you could just buy the Astro keyboard skin for the shortcuts like I did. Makes things really easy. There are some tools out there like that that are super handy. I don't use them. But I do have like all of my favorite shortcuts already memorized. And but I'm just on the brink. It's like I started my first workstation that I really used was Pro Tools. And then I used Nuendo Cubase for a long time. As soon as it was before Apple bought Logic, but I had a version of the eMagic before Apple, but I really started using Logic right when Apple bought it. Hard usage of using it in sessions and things. But then every once in a while, it's like I'm still teaching Pro Tools at the university on a regular basis. I still every once in a while test out Studio One to see if it's added any of the features I like, and they haven't. But so it's like there's too many pieces of software in my mind. Reason is another one. I used Reason from like version 2.5 or something. It's it's just too many things with shortcuts, and so I don't always try to remember them all the time. Cool. Any questions from anybody? I mean, what are you excited for in terms of? Do any of you own Mac Studios right now? Are you using Mac Studios? Are you thinking about getting a Mac Studio? Like, what's the story with all of you? I know there's only a few of you in here, but what are your thoughts on that? Ali Winter says, my favorite update for third-party plugins for all my modulation and band splitting desires the Kilohertz version 2 update. Cool. Gigadeath still waiting for delivery like I am. We're going to have a Mac Studio party. Now, I am actually using a Mac Studio right now. It's just the Max, not the Ultra. So, funny story about that. I have it on loan, but and you're like, well, who's going to loan you a Mac Studio? And it's a good question. It is so snappy. I have had zero issues. I've done some video editing on it. I'm just the difference between it and this and the Ultra, I think, are going to be pretty big. Right now, I'm not going to lie. This is very similar to my M1 Mac Mini, which is very snappy. It's super snappy. The M1 Mac Mini is not a bad box at all. And for most things I do in Logic, it has been perfectly adequate. And have run into very few issues except for big orchestral sessions, which I have to do a lot of freezing for on the Mac Mini. But other than that one area, everything else has been amazing. I don't think you can go wrong with any of it. Okay, a couple more people. Let's see, DB Vetter. I use a 2010 Mac Pro, but would love a Mac Studio. Gigadesk says still on i7, so I'm really waiting. Yeah, I bet you are. And then Ellie Winter, I can't afford M1 or M2 yet. I figure I'll use my Intel 2018 MacBook Pro till it's totally done. I mean, that's the thing. Man, I love technology, but it's not it's not moving at the, I mean, it's moving at the right speed because they're pushing the boundaries. They're pushing the boundaries. They're pushing the boundaries. But they're also not moving at the right speed because it's like the average person doesn't even get the full use out of what they have before the next thing is coming out. So I have real split views on this. And okay, Ivan, thanks for giving the update on the XSKN silicon skin. Um, I was like, I don't recognize the Astro keyboard name, so I was like, something new, sweet. But I don't recognize the other one either. So either way, but we update stuff too much. We're doing too much for the average person to keep up, but almost not enough for innovation to push us into new realms. Um, but I think it's really interesting. I think some of the technology out there is really interesting. I want more of it to trickle down to us, but I want there to be a push towards efficiency rather than bloat. That's my own personal view. I think that if they stripped off half of what Logic could do and made it more efficient, not half of what it can do, but half of what it does in the sense that it's overlap. Like I can think of like 5 ways to do some things inside Logic. Let's strip it down to 1 way or 2 ways. And if that makes it more efficient and can run on older computers, then great. I mean, I think that that would be a really positive thing. Cider says, I'm with an iMac i7 2014 and it's enough. It's enough. It can be. I mean, I'm going to be making a video not too long from now. I'm really interested in the role of limitations on things. But let me show you this. I got this mixer for a project I'm doing. I'm going to make a video about it. This is the Zoom LiveTrack L8, right? This thing is a studio all in itself. You can record straight to SD cards. It has like basic EQ and reverb on every track. It has, let's see, well, it really has 6 inputs, but you can do stereo on 7 and 8 with certain things. So it has 8 up to 12 inputs. But I'm going to start using this a little bit more in some situations where I don't want to bring my laptop or something and record right onto this and you can dump your files in later. I think that I love the idea of like those old cassette 4-track recorders, you know, where you could record a whole band to a tape and people still use them. I mean, it's not like that technology has disappeared all the way. People kind of like that vintage thing. This is a little bit different. It's a modern take on it, but it's still limiting and it makes you actually get takes instead of just fix everything. And then you can, you know, work on it later. I love the limitations in some way. And so an older computer, if you have the stuff that's working on it and you think somehow your music's going to get better with a newer computer, that's your first mistake. You're still going to be you, either making something meaningful or making something crappy. You can't change that part of you with some piece of new technology. So if you can't make awesome stuff with old stuff, your stuff's still going to be awful with new stuff. Let's see. To change the blue box, use the shortcut cycle through window views. Okay, cool. I'll check that one out. Cycle through window views. Gigadeath Tascam 414 Mark II, user for tape saturation effects. Awesome. My most productive time was on an ST with a Roland XP60. Cool. Can you give me $2,000? I want to buy a new MacBook. I want you to buy a new MacBook too. I don't have $2,000 to give you. I don't have $2,000 to buy one of those myself. That would be awesome though. A newer computer just lets you make a little more of the same level of music you make now. That's exactly right. I had a friend in high school. I went to a music school called Interlochen Arts Academy. And we always used to joke that we would just get the crappiest instruments that we played and go hang out on the beach someplace and for a year and just master making the best music on the worst instrument. It was a dumb idea, but it just always stuck with me that it's not the tools you have, it's the person who's wielding them. I think most people agree to some part of that romantic idea that you have to be the one with the ideas and the tools are just there to support you. Now, I would say there are some tools that try to do it for you. GarageBand actually being one of them. All the auto instruments, right? Has a guitar player and a bass player and a piano player in there. And so they're making music for you. And it turns out that it's not very good music, but it's still trying. It's only a matter of time. Cider says, do you mind explaining sending clock to hardware? We spend a lot of time making it work. I wish I had something set up that I could actually, when I get the new Ultra, I will have some units set up that that deal with clock. I can show you a little bit with this. Let's see what I have here. So under your project settings, under synchronization and MIDI, you can set your destination. So I don't have anything selected right now because I don't have anything connected right now. But you would choose it here, and then you could choose clock, and then you have your other items here that you can also send out with it. But for the most part, if you're just talking about clock, and so MIDI time, PDC. I don't remember. That's embarrassing, but we're going to look it up. PDC. What is PDC? PDC. Plug-in delay compensation. That's not what I expected for that. Okay, so I do know what PDC is. I just didn't realize that that was what that was there. So activates plug-in delay compensation for the MIDI output. So what that means is if you have audio plugins or other plugins which are causing a delay and you're using the delay compensation for your project, which is somewhere in here. Let's see, general, where is it lately? I don't remember where it is right now. There's the delay. There it is. So if this is turned on and you're having some delay from plugins that need more processing time, then apparently then you'll be able to actually delay the MIDI output for the clock signal or the MIDI signal. MTC is MIDI time code. So if you have a device that uses MIDI time code specifically, this is like not as accurate as SMPTE, which is audio time code, but it's like a quarter frame accuracy. So it can chase pretty well. People use it quite a bit. And then the machine control here, if you have a device that uses that, old tape transports would be MMC. Anyway, unless you have specific equipment that needs these two, then you don't have to worry about them. It's usually just the clock which sends out tempo information. And then down here, the clock mode, you can have it do, the play, start and stop with that. Or you can just do play, start only, or cycle jump. But so you have a little bit of flexibility here. For the most part, what this is for, I've got a couple synthesizers that have like built-in sequencers. And with those, if I want them to chase the MIDI clock for tempo information, then I can send it out. And anytime you do like an arpeggiator or a sequence, it's going to match the tempo of your overall project. So I think that's, this can be quite a bit to set up. But it's super worth it if you have anything else that does this. I'm trying to think. Every once in a while, this happened in one session a couple years ago where we were doing. It's like they had done the first part of this film sound or film mix in Nuendo, and they wanted it in Pro Tools, but it was just like decades of work because everything was different. Time code frame rates were different. The sample rates were different. Everything was different between what they had started in one, what they had started in the other. So I just sent MIDI time code from one to the other, and then they just like the one of them chased the other one with MIDI time code. But we did have some issues, I think, with some clocking because there was some MIDI involved. Anyway, it was a lot of fun to try to make that all work. I wish I could remember all the details, but it was a nightmare. I'll never do it again. Ellie Winter, let's go back into some of these other comments here. I actually use Logic's Drummer a lot, especially now that I'm better at mixing live drums. I love that it's easy to split all the parts out to audio tracks you can mix like you do record live. For me, the Drummer is one of the best parts of Logic. It's one of the best parts. There's nothing else quite like it. Now, there are some other third-party drummers which are really good, but none of them are quite as nicely bundled with a bow and tightly integrated into your software as the Drummer is. I just wish we had more kits, more performance styles. So I hope that we're getting some more of those. Let's add a bunch more drummer kits and performers to the bucket, and I think it will be great. As much as people keep on saying we want jazz, you don't really want jazz in here, but I would like some metal. Jazz is one of those things that's still better with a real drummer. Christo says, still waiting for the library to install and the M trackpad activated restore. Somehow now I'm just sitting here waiting. We'll wait with you, at least for a little bit. Cider says, do I need to play the project to send the clock? I believe so. Because it's only going to come when the transport is engaged. I doubt that it's going to just always be pumping stuff out. First time catching live. How you doing? I can't. So DJ says I can't get side chaining fast enough in Logic. There's always a delay. I check on it. I believe you. I haven't run into situations where that's an issue for me personally, because most of the stuff I'm doing is with Reverb or something, and it just doesn't affect. A little bit of a small delay won't affect too much, but I'm sure there's some times that would drive people crazy. Friendly Extortion says, I'm just starting to use Logic. That's awesome. Welcome. The multi-musician, Music Man. Yes, how you doing? More kits for the drummer would be great. I agree, since I just said it. But you're right that I'm right. And then using stock drummer as a groove track helps. Addictive drums or XO would play MIDI shifting to the drummer. Cool. All good stuff. I mean, this is a pretty cool piece of software, but as long as let's get to the point in our industry where people are like, what tool do you use? And you say what you use, and they say, cool, that sounds awesome. It's like, why the bashing? Why the territorialness, I mean, I haven't met a Reaper user that didn't want to insult me. So sweet, use Reaper, do it. Have fun, make something great. Don't just use it to use it though. Use it with some goal in mind. Make something creative from it. Cider says, I can't stop using Logic because of Alchemy. Alchemy is my second favorite instrument in Logic. It is amazing. It is so good and so powerful. I remember the days from Camel Audio before Apple bought it, and it's awesome. it is worth, I've heard this before from other people, but it's certainly worth the price of buying the whole software package. It's probably worth the price of buying an Apple computer. Just saying. I don't know. My throat's getting a little dry. Talking so much. I installed the plugin for the ERM multi-clock logic. It wouldn't show in the plugin folder. I can't help you with. Sounds like something is wrong with the other people. Cider says Vital came out and everyone went crazy about the remaps. Alchemy had them for years, right? I mean, Alchemy is amazing. What, for those of you who know me might know this, but if I say Alchemy is my second favorite synth in Logic, anybody know what my first favorite is? Any guesses? I'll give you a second. Let's see. Mickle says Logic remote app on iPad works well with Logic Alchemy. Screen sharing works fine too, besides a few dimension error till reconnecting. Yeah, I like the remote for sure. I'm actually using Sidecar right now on my iPad down here to look at comments and to do things. My iPad just set up here as a second monitor. It's super responsive. Cider, you are the winner. Sculpture is my favorite. It needs a user interface update, to say the least. That interface is like a nightmare. But it can do things that nobody else can do. Except maybe there's one, what is that plugin in FL Studio? I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. I don't use it that much because I have Logic. But if I wasn't using Logic, I'd be using the stringed based instrument in FL Studio. Esta says, should Logic come to iPad? I think, given the fact that this iPad has nearly, not exact, but very similar specs to my M1 Mini that's in the other room. They have similar specs in almost every way. I mean, this iPad can run some of you who were talking about like having 2014 computers, this iPad like blows that out of the water in terms of raw power. So it certainly could run Logic. I'm sure that someone in one of the labs at Apple has Logic fired up on their iPad running it and being like, yeah, this would suck. Because running Logic on an iPad would suck. There's no way that it would be a good experience. There's too many buttons. There's too many menus. There's too many of everything to ever run on an iPad. That would be insanity. Now, what we need is the ability to say, hey, Logic project, open up on my iPad and let me continue working on it in some way. And then when I go back to the main station, I just like put my iPad down and it transfers all my work over there without even being told. And then I can continue working on my computer. So there needs to be some cross compatibility with projects so that you can continue to be productive in different form factors without losing any of the work. I mean, it's possible. There's not even like, it's been possible for decades, probably. Years, maybe not decades. It's been possible for a long time to do that. It just needs creative people who have the time and resources allotted to them to actually make it happen. Let's see. Christo says, does it really take 2 hours on a Studio Max just to restore? Maybe. It might. Let's see. Change tempo to 6 to 8, drummer, readjusted. Okay, cool. Safindia. While we use Logic loops, do we need to gain stage the sounds in the pre-fader mode, or gain stage is not needed? Gain staging is different in every situation. And so all you got to really make sure is that things aren't too quiet or too loud, so that things that come later mess with it. So really, if you have something that's too soft and then you pump up the volume later with like a compressor or a gain, you're bringing up the noise with it. Or if you have something turned up too loud early and then you find yourself turning it down later, you could end up with distortion in there as well. So what you want is as straight as a pipe as possible, so that things aren't hitting the top or the bottom and causing either distortion or noise floor raising. And then if you're missing the top and the bottom, then pretty much anything in the middle, as long as it sounds good and gets your goal accomplished with what you're doing with that sound, then you're fine. It really doesn't matter any other way. Let's see. I have been disconnected arguing with Apple about Logic on mobile. They want to sell hardware. Yeah, I mean, that's what they do sell. And let's see. What if they made a Cubasis like version like Steinberg? They have GarageBand. It's not the same. I made a video about this recently, so go watch that. You'll see what I think. I want to learn how to rename vinyl drum sample and create a file. I don't understand your question, but you certainly can. If you're talking about the Apple Loop, just bring it into a project, export it with a different name. Is anything bad happening because it's restoring? Oh, I don't know. Another good question. Seems like a long time, but I don't know. Match EQ. I did make at least one, maybe two videos on Match EQ. Search my channel for them. I love Match EQ. The only thing I wish it did was real-time changes. But Match EQ, I keep reference files on hand, parts of songs that are similar to ones that I'm working on, and I dump in that as the source, and then I analyze parts of my song, and then I look at the resulting waveform to see just how different it looks, so that I know if I'm on track. Every once in a while I actually use one of those on the master, but usually it's more just to make sure that my ears, if they're tired or heard the song too often, aren't giving me the wrong thing. Our brains are super intelligent, but they're adaptive, meaning that you listen to a song 6 times and by the 6th time it sounds different to you than it did the first time, even if nothing has changed. Mostly in things like understanding of lyrics. So you'll get to know the lyrics and the song will change, even though the song never changed. It's just your perception of it. So we have to use tools sometimes to help just gatekeep and make sure that we're not messing things up because we are getting used to things. Yeah, just do a search for it. I'm sure it's on there. Let me see if I can. I don't know. I'll see what it's called for you. Oh. Oh, yeah, right there. 2 years ago I made one. And then here's one with Music Tech Help Guy, who's, as you know, awesome. I'm sure most of you have watched that. A few people. I might have even done some in that one as well. That's an old one. So Match EQ and Logic. His video has more views than mine. But I'm okay with that. Christo, every software is hard to navigate when you don't know it. And the more you use something, the better it is. we are about to wrap this up. I'm trying to keep this to about an hour today. I'm going 59 minutes. If you're talking about Sidecar, as I was just saying, I'm using it right now. So I think it works great. But I use it plugged in. I don't use it the wireless way most of the time. I think that it's a little bit more stable and snappy when I have it through a USB-C cable. Any last questions before we pull the plug on this? Okay. Well, thanks everybody. And I will be back on here. I'm going to be doing actually a big focus on live streams more than other videos for a little bit until the Ultra comes. And once the Ultra comes, then we'll be doing a series of non-live streams. So you'll have information either way, but make sure you check back every once in a while, see if there's any new content. Talk to you all later.